I made this portable cabin with a wood stove, and this is the second time setting it up. And this will actually be the first time spending the whole night in the cabin. The first time I set it up, I took a lot of time to make a pretty level platform for the floor in the snow, but this time I didn't get the ground completely flat. With the floor starting out a little wavy, it took a little longer to get most of the panels to line up and to get them connected, but once it was set up, there was no difference. Here's a clip from the next camp and the next video after this one, where I did not level the ground. Instead, I stacked up some boards and used a couple of branches I found lying nearby to get the floor level. It was plenty solid, and with the floor very level and all of the panels laying close by, it took only 19 minutes to set up the walls and the roof. Looking back at the video, this one took 41 minutes to set up the same 10 wall panels and 4 roof panels. In the first video, I carried the panels about 60 feet to where I set up the cabin. At this camp, you can see that I'm only a few feet away, and at the next camp, it turned out to be about the farthest I would probably want to be away from the car. At some point, I will try strapping on a wheel or a ski for snowy conditions to each panel, one at a time, that might extend my range. In that first video, I was only partly joking about being scared of a bear, although I actually was concerned about how potent a vinegar stain scent might be to a bear's sense of smell. Originally, that part was leading up to me showing a clip from a funny canned salmon commercial where a dude kicks a bear in the junk, but at the last minute decided to clip that part out of the video since it is copyrighted material. I've been camping, mostly in tents, well over 100 nights around Moab, Utah, and another 100 plus in the Colorado mountains. Never really worrying about bears. I'll spare you my attempt at talking on camera as I went to bed. In the morning, I made another half-hearted attempt. This was the first night that I spent the night in this cabin. This is June 19th. I got into the upper 20s last night. We're at just over 11,400 feet. It was pretty hot for the first couple hours. These windows make it really nice. There's just perfect cool air that cruises through here. And I let the fire die out. I slept with just this blanket. I could have used a sleeping bag if I got too cold. But instead, when I woke up around 4 o'clock, I threw some kindling in the fire and a couple logs, got the fire going, and it warmed up nicely for the rest of the morning. As far as I know, there is very little, if any, other cabins quite like this on the internet right now. A cabin that is portable, although it takes up most of the space of my car. It is just big enough to comfortably stand up in and hang out in a place where you can get some work done, with lots of windows for great views and good air circulation, and built to have a hot tent stove for winter camping. No tools are needed to assemble this cabin, although I did bring a drill to screw on that piece of unfinished plywood you see next to the stove. That blocks my blankets and sleeping bag from falling into the stove at night. I only used the hammer that you might have noticed lying in the dirt near the beginning of this video to loosen up dirt and make a level spot for the cabin. The stove you just saw is made for a hot tent, which is basically a tent made to be used with a hot tent stove. Hot tents have a stove jack made out of flame and heat resistant material placed where the chimney goes through the roof or wall. In this cabin, I used sheets of galvanized metal made for ductwork in one of the roof panels for the chimney opening. At the top of the chimney there is a spark arrestor which prevents the majority of the sparks from making it out of the top of the stovepipe. They don't block all sparks though, especially when the fire is roaring. These stoves, like almost any other stove, have adjustable dampers in the door and flue that you can use to adjust the airflow, which controls the fire intensity. As it turns out, so far it stays very warm, if not hot, with the fire at about the lowest level I can have it and still stay burning. Here's a bunch of frost, even with the windows open in near freezing weather. I think the only modification that I made for this camp was that I cut out the notches for the window latches to slide into and hold the windows closed. For now, I am keeping the windows open whenever I have the fire going, but the latches did make it easier to carry the panels without the windows swinging around. I have screens that I have cut to fit these windows, but I have not yet decided on how I want to secure them. So far, I haven't had a need for the screens. I'll need the screens when I camp somewhere where there is bugs flying around, and I hope that they also help cut down on some of the snow from blowing in whenever I get to camp in a windy snowstorm. Besides getting more comfortable talking on camera, I have some experimenting to do to improve the audio quality while talking inside the cabin. It is pretty echoey in here. I set this up so I can convert this where my bed was to a desk without a rail across the front here. That's why I moved this from over there to here. And then this desk is 5 foot wide here. And in a few minutes there I'll show you how I can put this desk over here. The first video was the first time setting up the cabin and the first time burning the stove in the cabin. So I'm still just beginning to assess the risk level of being inside a small space along with a wood burning stove. One of my friends once told me, when deciding if or how to do something with some risk, was to ask yourself these questions. Can you get hurt? Can you get injured? Or can you die or permanent disability? I don't remember the exact way he said it, but I have used that thought process over the years. The first level hurt is just things that might hurt you in the moment or leave you with small scrapes or cuts or bruises that will heal in a few days. The next level, injured, is for things that will take you out of commission for some time, but you should still fully recover, like broken bone or torn ligament. And the third is pretty obvious. In the cabin, there is a little bit of risk of getting hurt or injured by getting burned on the stove or stovepipe, but there is a real risk of dying from smoke inhalation, carbon monoxide poisoning, or a fire from which you cannot escape. Earlier, I mentioned that there's lots of windows to allow for good circulation, assuming the windows are open. Although, in the third camp, the next video coming out in a week or two, it was so calm outside at night that there wasn't much airflow. But other carefully considered features of the windows were the placement and the size and the ease of opening to function as an immediate fire escape. It's possible that I could wake up with the roof or walls or bedding on fire and not being able to get to the door or even get the door open. But I should be able to dive out one of the windows if needed. If there was a fire and I got out safely, I would still need to control the fire. Both this time and the first time I camped with this cabin were during low-risk fire conditions, no fire bans in effect. The first camp I was surrounded by snow, and this one you can see that I am just a few feet away from some snowmelt runoff. I also have a shovel, a large bucket, and a fire extinguisher on hand. In these conditions, with little wind, I would almost certainly be able to keep the fire under control. It is not uncommon for us to have fire bans in some counties in Colorado, especially during the summer, but they could be put into effect any time of year. Sometimes there's a stage 1 fire ban where you are prohibited from, quote, building, maintaining, attending, or using a fire, campfire, or stove fire, including a charcoal briquette fire," end quote. But that is if you are not in a campground. At the same time, you are, quote, "You can have a campfire, including a charcoal briquette fire, within Forest Service approved fire steer rings at improved campgrounds." I guess this is because they keep the ground in the immediate area around the fire ring clear. Stage 2 fire restrictions prohibit almost any fire except propane-fueled stoves with an on-off switch. Don't take my word for it though, look it up yourself. So anyways, it sounds like definitely during a stage 2 fire ban and probably during a stage 1 fire ban, I am not allowed to set this up and use the wood stove, even if the fire ban allows for campfires in a fire ring at a campground. I'll always check for current fire restrictions, and currently there are fire bans in effect where I live. So in the case of the next video, I had to go to the next county over where there are currently no fire restrictions in place. Well, that'll just about cover the fires. There were a lot of kind comments on the first video, and a few questions too. One of the comments was, "Try camping in a snowstorm." That's certainly one of the main reasons why I built this cabin, and right now, in the long-range forecast, a week out, which certainly could change by then, does show a chance of snow up here in the Colorado mountains. My favorite comment of all was, "So cool, goes to show that you don't have to be rich to enjoy life." So far, I don't regret any of the choices I've made, which mostly revolve around living and doing a lot of adventurous things in the mountains. Lots of fun and great experiences, some of which I will share in future videos. But most importantly, I would not have the same friends that I have now. One thing that caught me off guard about posting a video was how or whether or not I would respond to comments. I started out responding and hearting everything until I quickly realized that it didn't really feel comfortable to give hearts to people that I don't know. Also, doesn't seem sincere if there are hearts on every comment. If you only heart some comments, how would you even decide? I switched over to likes, and not sure about hearts in the future. It's a funny problem to have. Packing up is certainly much easier being right next to my car. Also helps having nice weather conditions. I am interested to see what it will be like setting up and tearing everything down in cold weather. I am not sure if I will be able to connect or disconnect the panels with gloves on, and if I do, they will have to be thin ones. So there will be a lot of warming my hands back up. I have footage ready to edit for the next video with some fall colors. With any luck, I might get to camp in the snow next week, and I hope to take a week off and get out into the desert for some hiking, mountain biking, and camping before the ski areas around here start to open up. On narrow roads like this, the uphill drivers have the right-of-way, and the downhill drivers, like me right here, are expected to back up the hill until there's a place for the uphill driver to pass. Whenever that happens, it will be pretty challenging, but I can see out both side view mirrors. Please check out the first video or the next one here once it is posted. Catch you next time.